If you're in search of the ideal complement to your laid-back weekend or a refreshing interlude of joy with companions, this collection is tailored perfectly to meet your desires. Take a leisurely seat, unwind, and let the amusement commence. As we delve into the narratives for this week, a true standout emerges ready to enchant its way into your heart. Oh, and remember to jot down the time markers of your favorite tales for effortlessly sharing with those in need of a happiness boost. So with no more delay, let's hit that play button and kickstart the amusement. Story 1. First grade, my second or third year, I had a kid whose mother was my first legit extreme helicopter mom. She would walk him into the classroom every morning and put his backpack and folder away for him, and then sit at his table with him, and he would cry and cry for her not to leave. Crying is normal at the beginning of the year, but at this age, they don't cry for very long once their parents have left. After about 5 minutes, he would be fine, but she would take 20 minutes to leave because she didn't want to leave him like that. I asked her a few times to let him get his things ready by himself, but I was young and this kid was a surprise kid. Had brothers and sisters with kids of their own, and parents were older. She didn't give a flying care what I would say. That's when I started rationalizing with the kid. Much easier. Do you see how all of your friends put their own backpacks and folders away every day? You're a big boy, too. You don't need mommy to do that for you, do you? Worked like a charm. After the second week, I started physically blocking her at the classroom door. I'm a big girl. Have them say their goodbyes and have him go in the room by himself. The first time that happened, he snatched the backpack from her and said, "I can do it. I'm a big boy." She was mad. One morning during the third or fourth week, I had a meeting, and it wasn't over before school started. The person covering my class didn't know to block her, and she let the crazy mom in. When I came back, the kid was crying his eyes out, chasing his mom around the classroom, and she was smiling and giggling about his fit that she caused. Around December, Mom had told the kid that he was going to be homeschooled and wouldn't go back to our school. When she dropped him off the next day, he cried, and we could not console the poor kid. She left him at the door and smiled at me because he was so upset when she left. After a few hours, he had finally calmed down enough to tell us the problem. "My mom said I was going to go to school at home, and I wouldn't have to come here today, but she lied." She told him she was going to homeschool him so he would cry when she left him at public school. What the hell? He had one friend in the class, super sweet boy who would play with anyone. The crazy mom kid would punch the other kids if they got in the swing next to his friend. No one else was allowed to swing next to him. Crazy mom called me and asked if I could let them two play inside alone so her kid could have him all to himself. Not in those exact words, but that's what she was asking. No, not an option. Cut to April, and we had a zoo field trip. Our whole class had our lunches in a cooler that was in the bus in the school parking lot, except his and his mom's. She insisted that she carry theirs, and she doesn't want them in the cooler. Whatever. We had a meeting time in place for lunch because parent chaperones took small groups of kids around. We didn't stay in one big group. Had to wait about 10 minutes for a very nice dad to fetch the cooler with the lunches. Perfect. Wait on the stragglers and let kids use the restroom and wash hands while waiting. During this time, a kid comes up to me and asks if I have a knife to peel his apple. Yeah, I always bring a knife to the zoo. No, the kind of knife you need to peel an apple isn't allowed in the school. Just eat it with the peel on. You'll be fine. He walks away. Lunch gets to us, and I make sure everyone is eating and accounted for. Come to the crazy mom, who is peeling her kid's apple with her car key. What? When she saw me walking up, she said, "It's better to eat the peel separately. It's healthier." With that smile, I say, "I hope you sanitized the key before you started. Otherwise, it won't be healthy at all." Then I return the same smile. At this point, she hands the apple to the kid, and he said he didn't want it. She was flabbergasted. "Why not? I just spent 20 minutes peeling it for you." He said, "That's gross. You used the car key," and walked away to play with his friends. There are more stories about this parent from other teachers as he moved through the school. She once snuck into the school to get a picture of him taking his first standardized test. This was literally against the law in Texas, photographs during state testing, and they had to contact the testing officials and fill out tons of paperwork, and our school had to reschedule the testing dates, all because crazy mom wanted a picture of her baby taking her first test for his scrapbook. Didn't mean for this to be so long, sorry. That mom still ticks me off when I think about her and how she messed up her kid's life. Crazy. I personally am Gen X, so we kind of experienced kind of the opposite. You know, we had our own key to the house while the parents were away working and left to our own devices. So this is nuts. And just assaulting the other kids like that just so the kid would have a friend all to themselves? Nuts. Story 2. When I was student teaching, I had a student and his mom was the art teacher. The student was a straight-up douche, would cheat on any assignment, belittle classmates, etc. Anytime the student got in trouble or called out, he would run to his mom, the art teacher, and she would fight for him. All the teachers in the schools were afraid of her since she has been in the district for a long time and was thought to do no wrong by the administration. The student ended up plagiarizing an essay in class. I gave the student a 0, as it was stated in the assignment sheet that all plagiarism would be an automatic 0, and all hell broke loose. Meetings with the principal were set up. Mom would come in during my plan period and rip my butt for failing her kid, and the student would come fake crying to class. The essay was a large portion of the grade and would mean he would fail the class. After about 2 weeks of the mom coming in, I finally told her that if he turned in a new essay to me by the end of the week, he could get 50% credit on it. Would move his grade to a D if he got 100%. The student came waltzing into class on Friday and hands me his essay. After quickly scanning the essay, it just seemed off. After a quick Google search, the student took the entire Wikipedia page and copied it for his essay. After school, I went down to the art room to talk to the mom. I still remember the conversation like it was yesterday. Me: "M did a great job on his essay." Mom: "Great." He was locked up in his room all week. It was the mom talking here. "He was locked up in his room all week working on it." Me: "When I looked at his paper, I did notice there was an odd section, though." Mom: "What do you mean?" Me: This section has a superscript number on it, and I don't see where he cited it." Mom: "That is odd. I'll ask him about it." Me: Pulls out the printed Wikipedia page over his topic that is word for word. "Here's the Wikipedia page over his topic if you want to look at it." Mom, scanning over both, and her face turns ghost white. "Will he be able to make this up?" Me, with a look of disbelief on my face. "Hell no!" The student ended up getting suspended, and Mom tried to fight the suspension. She even went as far as to look into the legitimacy of the grade since a student teacher taught the course. All in all, the mom is no longer a teacher in the district, and the kid is in jail for selling illicit substances. The rest of the staff loved me for standing up to her and her son. Wow. she just really abused the whole power, the mom on this one. And someone I guess the student teacher was just starting out, probably figured if this didn't work out, she could probably start somewhere else, and she managed to get the receipts. I wonder how many people wish they could have stood up to this mom like the like this student teacher did. Story 1. I was an assistant manager for 2 years. We had 2 rooms. An intro room, which was dorm room themed and fairly easy, and another which was a 2-party room about breaking out of jail and then trying to prove your innocence. You could escape the room without proving your innocence. These are some stories. So in the dorm room, we one time had a dad come in with his wife and family and wanted to do a room. The kids are like 6 and 8 or something. Well, they did bad. Like, really bad. Any way they could get something wrong, they did. They refused to use hints and didn't want us giving any. So they failed badly. The dad was grumpy the whole time through the room, and at the end, the kids asked if they could get ice cream. He responded with, "Ice cream is for winners." And they left soon after. Also in the dorm room, we had a puzzle that utilized a map to create a number, and one of the places is Reykjavik, Iceland. The amount of people I heard unable to pronounce that or even find it on a map, it was a general theme with people. The jail room was another thing. Like most jail rooms, the bars did something. Just a general theme, guys. You do a jail escape room, check the bars first. We had a woman on a date once, a very attractive woman with an older man. Well, in order to escape the cell you start in, you need to use the broom to grab a key and unlock the door. The standard old jail escape ploy. Well, this woman decided to climb through a bar that raised about 2 feet. She did it while wearing handcuffs and nothing under her black dress. I happened to be the only person there, and I was shocked. First and only time that ever happened. I don't think she realized we could see that well on the cameras and didn't seem to be bothered by it. Man, I could go on and on with these stories, especially about the jail, but I'm on mobile and it takes forever to type. Edit, spelling is hard on mobile. I have never really done an escape room in person myself. I know there are a lot of escape room games on PC and the like, but there's just something about being together in the room physically that I think I'm missing out on. And situations like this, for example. Story 2. I worked in an escape room for around 4 years. There have been many weird and confusing things I've seen, not including the extreme amount of Karens who demand refunds when their babies don't escape before the time ends. I have a top 4. An older teenager, probably 16 or 17, peeing on the floor. We tell all members that the front door is open and they're free to leave for the bathroom, etc. Hid in the bathroom for an hour waiting for her mom to pick her up. Watching a man take off a concerning amount of clothes and run around the room with a prop tied as a bandana around his head. Heard and possibly witness a divorce of a couple arguing over a 2-player game. "You're bloody useless. Then why did you marry me if I'm so incompetent?" "Well, I didn't think you were 5 years ago." And lastly, my favorite / the reason I quit my job. A light bulb in one of our rooms stopped working. Instead of pressing the call button, he decided he could fix it. I don't know how, because all we needed was to replace it with another bulb. But anyway, this guy then pulled out every single wire in the game, thousands of dollars of work and time to build, and then complained that it was our fault because we made his room faulty. But all in all, working there wasn't too bad. I thoroughly enjoyed the bachelorette parties that would joke and laugh. Also, the proposal in one of the rooms will always be my favorite day of work. Edit. I might also add that one of our franchised escape rooms had a guy take a massive dump on the floor for no reason whatsoever. Also, vomit is a common occurrence, but most make it to the bathroom, thankfully. Did this person with the light bulb think that the light bulb going out was part of the puzzle? And if he did, was he able to access hints? Maybe someone could chime in, maybe you're going to break the fourth wall, but just to say, hey, don't worry, the bulb is not part of the room. Don't worry about that. Story 3. My husband, my best friend, and I escape rooms a lot. I have many experience stories. We decided to do one just the two of us, and we're paired with another group of women. They were a bachelorette party, 3 of them, and they were wasted off their butts. Very nice. But it was very wasted. They were all wearing sashes that said Bride Tribe and insisting we all go drinking together after. The amount of times I said, no, we can't just bust down the door was incredible. But the best part was they were oddly helpful. They just kept finding things and bringing them to me. One found a clue because they took a painting off the wall, which I probably wouldn't have ever done. The place was really nice about the whole thing. They gave us a free game for being so chill about the whole thing. And we still got out of the room. My other favorite was a spaceship-themed room we did with a couple of teenagers. The teenagers were great. They were helpful. We solved a code and a section of the table started opening up. Before we can even register what's happening, this boy reaches in and hits what is apparently a big red button. The whole room starts going off, and it's in self-destruct mode. Red lights, siren, the whole bit. The kids lose their minds that we're going to fail the room, yelling at their friend, and the adults are trying to stop laughing long enough to explain that we already knew how to fix it. There was a panel where 2 people turned keys in tandem to stop the self-destruct, as every space movie always has. I will never forget the look on their faces. Absolute total panic. I think it's funny that the bachelorettes were so helpful while they were drunk is just because you are literally thinking outside the box. You're relaxed. You're not really thinking logically or clearly, so you're probably going to do stuff that your sober self is going to let your brain get in the way of yourself to think about. Story 4. I worked at an escape room where the game masters were inside the room with the guests as actors who were in character with the room's theme. We had a zombie room with 2 actors, a doctor and a zombie. The plot of the room was fun. Guests walk in, the doctor would begin a scientific lecture about a virus reanimating dead tissue. While this is going on, the zombie, chained to the wall, chain gets longer every 5 minutes, is snarling. After like a minute, the doctor would have to tranquilize the zombie as preparation for experimentation. Here, the zombie would attack the doctor. Alarms go off, doors self-locks to contain the virus, and now we have an hour to escape or be locked in forever. As the doctor, I would get more and more sick as the hour went by, all while trying to remain studious and terrified at the same time. With about 3 minutes to go, regardless of where the guests were escaping, I'd faint. Usually, everyone stopped what they were doing to gawk, waiting for me to pop back up. This was usually where the zombie in the room would go ham and start chasing people around the room. With the commotion, I'd twitch, and they'd scream each time I did because it added to the confusion and chaos. I actually made someone pee themselves doing this. With a minute left, I'd pop up in a backbend and start spider walking at people with an Alka-Seltzer tablet foaming out of my mouth. Story 5. Bachelorette party came in and booked the Jungle Temple themed room. They were beyond wasted, and I'm not sure why we even let them play, but whatever. In the first room is a book with some pictures of fertility idols, which were just little Buddha statues. One of the girls went to the bride-to-be and pointed to the Buddha and said, "Look, it's your fiancé!" And everyone but the betrothed had a good laugh. The bachelorette stood in the corner and Blair Witched it for a few minutes, while one of her friends consoled her. 15 minutes into the game, The one who made the joke had enough of it, I guess, and stormed over and whipped her around and yelled, "It's not that serious. Get over it." Dude got sucker punched by the sash-wearing, tiara-clad Hulk. Straight domed, made a great sound. I look over at the monitor and see them all swirling in a storm of fists. I get up and head over to the phone and call the manager at the front desk and let her know about the fight club happening in Temple. They continue to fight in the hallway outside the room before moving to the sidewalk outside, giving a great show to the next-door CC's Pizza visitors. Best part is when they stopped smashing their fists into each other's skulls, they came back asking for a refund since they only used a quarter of the time they paid for. If you're ever looking for a job that guarantees good stories, look for escape rooms. People are dumb, and you get to watch them do it. Story 1. I was working in a restaurant chain. You've heard of it if you live in the U.S. And the management were complete tools. They all of a sudden decided everyone had to work split shifts. If they were working that day, they would give me write-ups for giving customers exactly what they asked for, in front of the customers, stuff like that. So one day, the hot water was out. Completely. No hot water for washing hands, washing dishes, nothing. So here I am thinking, yeah, extra day off from this hellhole, and told the manager. His response was that he didn't care. The staff reminded him of health code regulations, and he still didn't care. So I promptly went to the bathroom and called the health department to file a complaint. They had an inspector there in under an hour and shut the place down for the day. Justice, right? But it gets better. The manager starts getting crazier by the day. He starts suspending people for putting one extra slice of tomato on a salad or not having the crease on the arm of their shirt continue into their cuff. Really harsh punishments for very minor infractions. But the health code violations are getting worse. The hot water keeps going out, and occasionally power to one of the walk-in refrigerators would cut out, things like that. Well, every time it would play out the same way. Something would go out, management would not close as they were required to do by law. I would call the health department, sometimes the inspector directly, as I now had his cell number, and they would come out and shut the place down until the problem was fixed. The general manager was freaking out. He had no idea why the health department was all over his butt, and he continued his slide into jerkwaddom. Eventually, he screamed at me about the crease in my shirt on the floor in front of customers, and I just laughed and walked out in the middle of service. On my way out the door, I wished him good luck with the health department and laughed. Epilogue. Corporate decided to shut that location down not 5 weeks later due to profitability problems and paid over $1 million to break the lease. Now that location is home to Chinese Super Buffet and seems to be doing a good amount of business. Too long didn't read? Butthole management of restaurant treats staff like junk, ignores health code violations, staff rats out restaurants to the health department so many times that corporations shut down restaurants. Seems like that's the only way any of that behavior is going to get shut down. Corporate seemed to be fine with the way they were treating the customers and were even willing to let the health code violations slip if they weren't getting called out. But, if they're not making any money, well, that's the problem that needs to be addressed. Story 2. In 2009, my wife and I were in the process of moving from California to Pennsylvania. We were driving a 1990 Jeep Cherokee at the time, which had about 290,000 miles on it. So we decided it was time to look for a new car. This was at the end of cash for clunkers, so lots of new cars were hard to get, but eventually we found a place that was giving the same amount of money on newish used cars. So we found a 2007 Honda CR-V we really liked and began the process. As they do their thing, they realize I have fairly bad credit but really good income, $60K a year at the time, and my wife had really good credit but no income. so they're having a heck of a time getting us a loan. They say they'll continue to look while we wrap up our moving plans. A couple of days later, we got a call from the dealership saying they had found a loan. They offered to drive the car to Oregon, where we were visiting family. We decline and instead head down to pick up the car after our mini vacation. We give them our vehicle, a $1,500 deposit, sign paperwork, and drive off the lot. First month of payment was included in the final price. So we load the new car onto a moving dolly and drive cross-country with it behind a 17-foot U-Haul. Get all settled in, and back to work I go. After the second month goes by, we still haven't received anything from the dealership or bank on the loan, so we make a phone call. A week later, the bank called me to verify the location and phone number of my employer on the East Coast. They do their thing, and it all seems good. They called back an hour later asking for verification of my wife's employment. I explained she hadn't worked since 2007. Apparently, they had changed the info on our loan applications to make her work appear recent. I get a call from the dealership saying the loan fell through and demanding we give the car back. This quickly escalates as we deal with a dealer owner and a lawyer in our family. They come and repo the car. They overnighted us our $1,500 and gave us our Jeep back, which was on the West Coast, and refused to transport it for us. Overall, a pretty awful situation. That is terrible. As much as we depend on cars for our daily lives and everything, it's awful that they exert this kind of power over us. What was the deal? Why were they doing this? Were they trying to get away with it, or were they just trying to squeeze a little bit of money out of that? Especially, and what are they going to do now that they refuse to transport it? They have to go all the way back and get it? Really scummy. Story 3. Went to Ozfest in Deer Creek, Indiana, possibly 2002, 2003. It was super, super hot out. Water was $3 a bottle, but they wouldn't let you have the bottle. They had to pour it in a cup, so no putting the cap on and walking around. Even worse, they turned off all the water fountains. The icing on the cake, they turned the cold water off in the restroom sinks. Only hot water. People were passing out left and right. Marilyn Manson was one of the headliners, so a bunch of his fans were wearing all their black gothy clothes and getting sunburned on their pasty white skin. I felt really sorry for them. I got the worst sunburn of my life, too, because there was no shade. I can't believe they turned off the cold water in the restrooms. That's freaking low. Heck, turning off the water fountain should have been illegal. I had friends that only brought a few bucks, so they had to drink hot water from the restroom faucets to stay hydrated. Turning off the water fountains actually was likely illegal. Water must be available for patrons at events that could lead to dehydration or heat exhaustion. They can sell you cups, but they must always be willing to provide a free source of water. Yeah, I think in the coming years that's going to be even more and more of an issue if we continue to have concerts during the summer, especially with the way this last summer's weather has been going. That is definitely illegal. They should have had some investigation into that. Story 4. At my sister's wedding, the DJ demanded an extra $250 per his contract. There was a clause stating if assistance wasn't provided to help unload at a venue that involved taking the equipment upstairs, the extra charge would be added on. The main dance area was on the ground floor. It was the DJ's choice to set his gear up on the landing 3 measly steps above the dance area, and the groom and best man both offered to help more than once. Note, both are over 6 feet tall. Also, my sister had stated they didn't want to do formal toasts from the best man and myself, the maid of honor. The DJ took it upon himself to do it anyway, putting us both on the spot without speeches prepared. Then, he asked if anybody else in the audience wanted to make a toast as well. It was like a talk show with him wandering around randomly shoving the mic in people's faces. If it weren't for all of us being very cool and laid-back people, that jerkwad could have seriously ruined the wedding for everyone. Wow, what a tool. I've always wondered why people seem to hate DJs so much. Now I know. Story 5. Friend's wedding reception hall pulled the contract stated that it ends at 11 p.m. They negotiated and were told it was 1 a.m. I guess the double one messed everyone up. It's okay, it was a few miles from his parents' house, which has a large pool, backyard, deck, etc., so although ticked, we were just going to move the party a few miles away. Then the bartender, who was hired and paid, along with a security guard, by the people who they are now insulting, said that any booze you paid for and is here you can't take with you. He was fighting with the groom's father over it. My brother, underage, and a tad tipsy, came up and slapped his ID on the counter. You've served me, what, 10 drinks? Look at that ID. Not 21. We can get the cops involved because I have a feeling they care less about us taking booze he paid for than they would you serving underage. Crickets chirp. Those jerks stood silent as we loaded every drop of liquor from behind the bar into cars and left that hellhole. Who tries to pull that junk on people on their wedding day? I love how underage drinking saves the day here. Story 1. I hired a server engineer that I had a weird feeling about. I shook it off because my guys liked and had confidence in him. A couple of weeks in, he got a call from the Department of Justice working in a certain state verifying his employment. Strange, I've never had that before, but blew it off thinking it was a child support thing. We worked for a couple local law enforcement departments, so I ran his name through, and it came up clean. No criminal history. But I just couldn't shake my feelings. He then had to fly back to the city he moved from for a couple of days and needed time off. He didn't say why, nor did he tell any of the guys why. While he was gone, I decided to let him go. Everyone thought I was a shrew for doing it. They didn't say anything, but I knew. Fast forward a couple months later, I hear, "Holy hell," from my marketing guy's office. He started telling us to come. There he sat, stunned, looking at a Yahoo page. Back when Yahoo had actual news. The guy had hacked into a huge medical company and stole tons of personal information and trashed their network before I hired him. He had committed self-unaliving by stepping out in front of a tour bus doing 80 on a highway. Because he was found guilty and going to jail, he emailed his wife a self-unaliving note. The last line of the Yahoo article said, "Due to the horrific nature of the accident, the patrons of the bus company had to have extensive counseling." We all just stood there shocked to read it. Sounds like after that phone call verifying his employment came in, they were on to him. I guess he didn't cover his tracks like he thought he did. And I don't know what was going through his mind at this point. In a way, it's kind of good that this company wasn't involved when that he was let go. They probably, some way, might have been held liable. I don't know. Story 2. Kenneth. He never stopped talking. Asked all the girls for their numbers. Didn't get any. Had to have numerous closed-door meetings about personal physical harassment, as if the court-mandated ankle bracelet didn't teach him that. And once he was finally fired, proceeded to come into the store as if he were still part of the team. Oh, he also meowed at customers and staff. Strange thing, he wasn't the only one who meowed. Another member we had, Robert, the pathological liar. He was enlisted in the military for 6 years, and his fiancée's mom tried to unalive him for the insurance money the Army gives. He won a 2012 Camaro from a contest, supercharged. Another employee offered to buy it from him to call him out on his hogwash, and even brought in the check. Robert failed to show up that day, and the car was stolen. He told stories about me to my staff from high school. We did go to the same school at the same time, but I am 4 years younger, so we only had one overlapping year. He was held back a year. These stories never happened. He worked 3 jobs and had over $50K saved up, even though his best friend got him the current job and told us none of that was true. He was a manager at a different chain store, but left because the owner tried to sleep with him. The owner does sleep with his managers, but this guy was never one. He could barely ring in an order. He was shot and stabbed so he couldn't come into work, but the next day he was miraculously fine. There are lots more, but I honestly can't remember them all. The best part? He stuck to them all, never forgot any details, and never changed his story. He was a good guy, but man, you're not impressing anyone. He remembered all the details? It just sounds like everyone just knew he was lying, but really tried to press him to get him to slip on something. But keeping up that facade for so long is just incredible. Which one would you rather deal with, the habitual liar or the meower? Story 3. My time to shine. Guy named Austin. I'm what you might call middle management at work. I have a whole team of people under me, but 2 levels above me. I'm responsible for a lot of the day-to-day operations. Austin was hired as someone on an equal level to me, 6 years before I was hired. Within 2 months of working at the job, I surpassed him in proficiency and job knowledge. I was teaching him things daily. He had absolutely horrible customer service. He was one of the cockiest, most standoffish, most rude service industry people I've ever met. The collective rest of the team, including me, both above and below me, got maybe 2 customer complaints a year. He, by himself, had about 5 or 6. He finally left us over a questionable injury. He saw a ticket out and took it. Our company attorneys did some digging into his history as part of the court battle and found that he had quite a colorful history of leaving employers via workman's comp claims. It finally bit him in the butt, I guess. One of my favorite stories is the ex-con. Austin got really upset when people would come in within a half hour of closing. The biker guy with what had to have been a full body of tattoos, ripped beyond belief, really rough demeanor, came in 5 minutes to close. He had nothing but a backpack and said everything he owns is his motorcycle and what's in the backpack because he just left the prison. A part-timer was dealing with him. Dude wanted spark plugs for his motorcycle. Part-time guy was like, yeah, no problem, be right back. Austin walks up and asks what the guy needs. The guy chuckles and says, totally obviously joking, your other guy's already got me. You guys need to get your act together. Well, Austin gets all butthurt and starts verbally abusing the guy. They get into an argument. Austin tells the guy to leave the store. The guy is like, fine, I don't care, and starts leaving. He gets most of the way to the door, stops, and says, listen, man, I really need these plugs to get my bike going. I'm sorry, I'll stop talking, just let me get my plugs and go. Austin is like, nope, leave. I was about to walk over and get involved because this is mentally challenged behavior, when the guy starts walking out and mumbling about meeting Austin in the parking lot after work. Well, Austin heard and yelled out, why wait until after work? I'm here right now, butthole. The guy spins around so fast it was a blur, slingshots his backpack across the store, physically rips his shirt off and starts running towards Austin. Austin was on the phone with 911 faster than the dude could even take another step. The guy picked up his stuff and left saying, yeah, that's what I thought. Austin never lived that one down. Many more stories if anyone's interested. Oh, sure. Anyone would be upset if someone comes in that late, right before the store closed. But pick your battles, person, Austin. My goodness, this is just something simple. It's just spark plugs. If this guy was ordering 500 parts 5 minutes in, you might take a little bit of an issue, but still pick your battles. Yee. Story 4. His name was Harold. He was Filipino. During his time working with the company, he spoke maybe 50 words with me in 3 years. Almost every time was, "Hey, CS, baby," in his thick accent. I wasn't necessarily married when he asked me the first time either. I later found out why. He had an absolute fascination/obsession with breast milk. Yes, you read that correctly. Breast milk. Here's how I found out. When I quit, he decided to throw me and another employee a party, consisting nearly entirely of karaoke and beer. I don't drink, but Harold proceeded to get completely wasted. It was the most I heard him talk, and his wife was an amazing singer. It was shocking how they were the same height and build. Harold then asks me his famous question. "CS, baby?" "No, Harold, no baby yet." "Why do you always ask me?" He then smiles a very creepy smile and stands up and signals me to come with him. We go into his basement, and he opens up a freezer. This is one of those huge deep freeze type freezers that serial unalivers hide bodies in. I was sure I was going to perish. Then I see it. Tons and tons of milk. I knew instantly it was breast milk. I just knew. "Harold, I won't sell you my wife's breast milk," I said. Certain he would be angry with me and chop me into little bits to feed dogs or something. Instead, he went on a rant about how healthy breast milk is, how good it tastes when you prepare it right. You should always drink breast milk when you're sick. He said it was a magical cure-all, and that it was all because God infused something in breast milk that would heal children of just about anything. I learned a lot about breast milk that night. Harold offered to sell me some. I declined as politely as possible and rejoined the party. I sang "Spice Up Your Life" last night, if you're at all curious. Too long didn't read? Filipino man doesn't talk, throw a party, shows me his collection of black market breast milk. I sing Spice Girls at 2:30 in the morning. Story 1. Self-development books, psychology books, and biographies to find out what the hell is wrong with me. One 30-second information video about ADHD changed my life. The clouds parted, I'm now on medication and living the life I wanted to create for myself by taking a simple pill every morning. It took 37 years, but I'm now the person I felt was locked in there since I was a child. I'm so happy I could cry. Well, almost. I still haven't cracked the code on that one, but I'm pretty darn happy. Not to mention a better husband, father, and worker. Edit. The TikTok video in question just made me curious about ADHD. It basically said, "Hello, you're probably seeing this because the algorithm thinks you have ADHD. Look at my channel for more." I scoffed because I thought ADHD was something completely different, but I checked the channel out. There was this doctor, I think, listing signs and symptoms of ADHD. The videos made me curious enough to learn about ADHD, so I took some online tests and read a little about it before contacting my doctor to get a proper diagnosis. I can't find the video itself, so I deleted TikTok a long time ago. Edit 2. If you suspect having ADHD, please get a medical professional's opinion. Do not self-diagnose. Tip: do a little research on your own beforehand and make a list of the things you have problems with in life that you think can be traced to ADHD. It makes the doctor or psychologist's job easier and might speed up the process. It could be things like not being able to hold a job, pay bills on time, stay in relationships, blow money on new hobbies every month, not being able to study, lack of impulse control, and a lot more. There are a lot of different types of ADHD. It's a spectrum. You can also have ADHD traits without having enough of them to get a diagnosis. For the longest time, I always had trouble staying awake during the day, no matter how much I was asleep. And I found it was due to having severe sleep apnea for many years. I usually lived by myself and wasn't able to get a proper idea what was going on until some people hit me up when I stayed at their place. It was very much like this. I just didn't know until I had an idea of what it was and was able to get it diagnosed. Changed the way I live. Story 2. Asian parent piano lessons. Didn't make them happy, didn't make myself happy, never got any good at it. Gained no useful skills whatsoever for the several hundred hours per year per multiple years spent practicing. Asian orchestra kids, rise up. I faked my way through every concert. The only joy the piano gave me was pointing out to my parents 40 years later that I've never touched a piano since they stopped forcing it on me. We always had a piano in our house growing up, but I was never given a lesson. I eventually learned to play in my late 20s and love it. I wonder if I had been forced, if it would have unalived my interest in it. It definitely has an effect. I love going fishing now whenever I find the time, but when I was a kid, being forced to sit by a rancid lakeside doing nothing, I hated it, and once I was old enough, stopped fishing for about 10 to 15 years. My brother has a good way to take kids fishing. He brings tons of snacks, keeps it short and exciting. The second he senses the kids starting to lose interest, they go home. The kids are always excited to go fishing now. The best way to get a kid to love to go fishing is to make them fish. Let them explore, throw rocks in the water and splash in the water. You know, fun stuff. Well, that's great for the kids and getting them into it, but if you actually want to fish, it's really hard to do it with kids. Unless they're older kids. Sounds like your brother is playing the long game where he gets them hooked while not really being able to fish himself, so once they're older, he can actually go fishing again, but with his kids. Smart guy. I was never one to be able to afford piano lessons when I was younger. I sang a lot in high school, but it was around that time that synthesizers started to get popular, and I started to explore electronics on my own. Took a few piano lessons to learn a bit about how to play, and I was able to get into it myself. Story 3. I managed to accidentally wipe the drive that held all my work. I'm a semi-professional game dev. There were 10 years worth of meshes, materials, and code. It's been 10 days. I've just been in a sort of state of shock, having tried and failed to recover the lost files. Everyone who reads this, go back up your data now. I'm so sorry to hear this. Edit. Thanks for the gold. And remember the 3-2-1 rule. 3 backups, 2 formats, 1 off-site. 2 formats? I have 3 drives and keep 1 off-site, but what do you mean by formats? I'm just a dude that doesn't want to lose pictures and home videos, so maybe that's more of a work thing? Like DVD, external drive, cloud storage. I've been through several major floods and a house fire. Every bit of evidence of my childhood is gone. I also had a situation similar to the above commenter where my entire portfolio of writing was lost. Now I'm vigilant about backing up anything that matters. One is a hard drive buried in a cemetery. The other is a flash drive in your prison wallet. I will say this. Back up your stuff. Maybe look into investing in some sort of cloud storage, but have another form of backup. And definitely upgrade your drives every once in a while. I always have to upgrade, especially now that I'm doing video, because I keep getting more and more data. Story 4. I took 2 years of French instead of Spanish in high school. I live in Texas. I live in Massachusetts, and I still should have taken Spanish instead of French. But at least whenever I go up to Montreal, I can order my food in my terrible French and show everyone I'm an American immediately. Same here. My favorite was when I was in Paris and I ordered in French, and the waiter just responded in English. His unstated but understood point, this is going to go much easier if we both stop pretending you can speak French. Touché. I live in the Southwest now, and Spanish would have been much more useful. I was emailing with a French company regarding potential partnerships, and around the time of the 5th exchange, they said that they agreed with the general terms, and we should now switch to English to negotiate the final contract terms. 100%. We spent a year in Paris. My wife and kids were furiously studying French in the lead-up, for 2 years. and I meant to get around to it but didn't. I was there and otherwise just going to be a tourist, so no pressure on me. Pretty much everyone spoke English far better than we spoke French. In the end, I barely spoke anything but English while in the city. The French seemed particularly unwilling to hear their language mangled. I'm French-Canadian, and they were responding to me in English in Paris. I was like, the hell? Well, shouldn't that be le hell? Well, I remember traveling with someone from Quebec for a few days while in Amsterdam. He hated his experience with Paris because the locals acted like they were disgusted by his French. Yes, it's exactly how it felt. Only experienced it in Paris, though. The rest of France was normal. Story 5. Not ours per se, but lots and lots of money. When I was a kid, CDs were king. This was also back when a typical CD was like $16 at Sam Goody, etc. I'd mow lawns in my neighborhood 4 hours on a weekend and get $10 each, which was good for about a dozen albums a month. My parents also gave me lunch money for school, $2 a day, which I pocketed for another album a week. So basically, I sacrificed nutrition and my weekends for the entirety of my middle school/early high school years to build up a massive album collection that was the envy of all my musician friends. It was glorious. I thought for sure this would be the crown jewel of my adulthood and that I would pass them on to my kids someday. And then when the iPod/iTunes came out, it was all pointless. I see your point, but I'm sure you discovered some really cool music from it. Plus, you had access to a big library once you could rip CDs. I bought my first CD on a whim because of a song I heard on the radio, and if I had waited to get into music later, I probably would have missed out on some good tunes in my formative years. Plus, buying CDs supported the bands you liked and helped finance the music scene. It's not all in vain, my dude. Story 6. Indigenous knotting. I used to be able to make the most beautiful dresses, armors, and regalia using traditional knotting and beading techniques. Broke my arm about a decade ago, got fat, and got arthritis. Now my hands don't even work well enough to teach the next generation how to do it. I do beadwork. Very, very poorly, but I do it. As I've learned how to do it, I've learned there's going to be next to no reason if I'm never better than now. I've never even finished a piece. Why do I keep doing it? There's another whole generation down that my ancestors made before our bloodline stopped beading. My dad taught me. My aunt taught him. My grandma taught my aunt. I can teach my kids, and they may absolutely suck too. But that's another generation down that we weren't extinguished. I feel proud knowing what my great-grandpa went through in the residential schools, even though our language is next to lost. We still have something passing down. I'm awful at beading. Me and my dad have both never completed a piece, but my dad made me a beading piece and he got my grandma's. That itself serves a purpose to me. Don't think of it as lost. Think of it as another generation forward. Do you have any pictures of your work? I'm curious to see. It sounds fascinating. This sounds like fascinating work. So much of what I do, like music and graphics and everything, all gets tied to translated to digital data. I think it's really helpful to have something to do, some kind of activity or some kind of hobby that can be translated or done in the real world with real things. I believe it's the exact definition of touching grass. I think that needs to happen. Story 7. I got an aviation degree because it used to be the only way you could qualify to become an air traffic controller. The age cutoff is 30, and I graduated when I was 29. Well, they decided to restructure the hiring process mere months after I graduated and canceled all hiring panels for 2 years. I aged out and now have a frustratingly useless degree that I still pay student loans on. Edit. First, thank you for the huge response. This happened about 11 years ago. I am making a lot of money doing something I love in another industry, so don't worry about me. It was devastating at the time, but I'm content in what I'm doing now. Had to edit that again because of all the people who are negative about hearing everything happens for a reason and living my best life. I'm happy and successful, and if you can't live with that, go be negative somewhere else. To answer the most common question here, why is 30 the cutoff age? This is a very high-stress job that requires you to have a sharp mind at all times. It's like playing a mathematical puzzle that unalives 300 people if you botch up. They offer/encourage retirement with a pension at 55, but you need 25 years of service to be eligible. Hence, the oldest you can be to start the job is 30 years old. This is so painful. I'm sorry. That's a strange one because I'm 28 now and I'd have to say my mind is more set on work now. I didn't give a care about anything even 5 years ago. Story 8. I spent over a decade learning how to draw, studying design techniques, etc. Tried to work as a professional designer and illustrator, and it was terrible and made no money. Now I'm a software developer. Every once in a blue moon, it's useful for making graphics, but really just pointless. I'm an engineer. We're not exactly known for our artistic inclinations, but we do use figures and sketches a lot to convey ideas. Most of us do fine with our chicken scratch diagrams during meetings, but I had one boss who was at a whole other level. He could draw clear, neat isometric views of things upside down so that the person sitting across the table from him could see it. It didn't exactly make him elite, but it sure did help with communicating his ideas. As another artist who doesn't make his money from his art, you're not just learning to create pretty pictures, you're learning how to see, how to observe the world and make connections between things that aren't readily apparent. It's reorganized your brain in ways you might not be totally aware of yet. 10 years is a lifetime. Drawing is an amazing skill. Indeed, and a great hobby, if not a side hustle. That's not time wasted at all.
Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 9. This is the life of a geneticist. The field moves quickly with the technology and techniques, but they are all very complex and difficult to learn. More than once in my life, I have poured myself into a specialized skill to be the best in the building, only to have that skill be obsolete the next year. It never feels that bad, though, because the replacements are almost always faster, easier, and get you better results, or else they don't really take off. My mentor wanted me to take 3 years of residency to go to the States and learn a very special technique of medicinal substance delivery. I didn't go. The technique was irrelevant a couple years later. Just curious, was it an inhaled insulin? It was a bong with Mountain Dew as the water. Well, that technique is still relevant in my world. We've moved on to Baja Blast, actually. Story 10. I got a BS in biochemistry, then drove a forklift for 14 years. Now I'm an electrician. Whoop whoop! Fellow biochem graduate, I earn $12 an hour in a lab after working in wastewater. I do budgets now. I should have never done that. There were other ways to get to medical school that I clearly couldn't pursue because I did so poorly in the undergraduate degree. Same. Started at $11, worked my way up and out of the analysis part of the lab. Reached the highest I could get at the lab. Project manager and topped out at $18 an hour. Now, my role mostly involves accounting. All y'all are reporting that back to your universities, right? Mine emails what feels like effing 6 months like, "Hi, how are you? What is your job? Please tell us so the students have something to hope for." And it's sad to hear that the people I considered as going big places are struggling that hard. I also wish colleges would teach you how to do a general career change, because that would be so nice to know right about now. Story 11. Prepping. If nothing apocalyptic ever happens. All my prepper friends can't cook. Invest time in cooking, preparing food, smoking, and grilling. It will not be a waste of time, and if you ever need to cook without electricity, you'll be the king. I watched a prepper show and saw their bunker and we can feed 120 people for 6 months with what we have down here. Me with 2 decades of cooking experience. Not with that electric 4-burner, you're not. Prepper shows are rife with people who don't know what the hell they're doing and are LARPing as Mad Max rebels. I'm not a prepper, but even I know that you're not going to survive in your haphazard repurposed septic tank bunker that relies on electric airflow and isn't watertight. Most of them have never even been camping outside an RV. Story 12. When I was 20, I got a job at an up-and-coming tech company. 6 months later, they went IPO in a big way, and I was worth $2 million on paper. 6 months later, and the stock tanked, before I was legally allowed to touch the shares. I read a profile in Wired years ago about some 20-something kid who was a zillionaire on paper. He personally owned the URL business.com back when URLs were hot, and he was offered $400 million for the URL and turned it down. Then tech crashed, his company burned, and he was literally flipping burgers riding out the shareholder suits. Deity, damn, that's painful to read. You'd spend the rest of your life regretting that. Yeah, Wired at the time always hero-worshipped those little tech bro snots. It was gratifying to see at least one get pie in the face. Story 13. I played around 12,000 hours of soccer, got pretty good at it, but it didn't work out, so now I'm an engineer that secretly can play soccer at a professional level. I was an extremely competitive national-level swimmer who ended up retiring freshman year of college due to injuries and chronic fatigue. I don't consider that time wasted in the slightest. Life is about collecting experiences, and there are still many skills from that time that help me today. I'm still athletic and swim laps for fitness, and I've been getting more into weights. I can free dive once or twice a year and have a great time with my boyfriend who does scuba. I have a mermaid tail and want to get into more mermaid swimming. Being a strong swimmer is never a wasted skill, and achieving a high level in any sport will translate into success in other areas of your life. Fine-tuned coordination, additional muscle development, and increased aerobic capacity will probably pay dividends for life. I wouldn't call those 12,000 hours pointless. Story 14. Being a decent, hard-working employee for a large multinational corporation. Everyone is replaceable. Even me. My boss. Co-founder. I made that mistake once. It took me 3 years to realize it had no future, then I left. It could have been worse, I guess. The pay was bad, the workload insane, and every single management position that opened they hired from outside the company. There was no motivation whatsoever to stay there. Same. Laid off after 13 years while 8 months pregnant. My husband was just laid off from his company after 13 years. No cares given. Just a meeting out of the blue telling him it was over. 2-week severance. Such hogwash. I'm sorry this happened to you, especially being pregnant. Story 15. World of Warcraft. I haven't talked to any of my old guildmates in years. I got server-first terminations and worked my butt off to be the top of my game, and it means next to nothing. I look back on the time I spent fondly and wouldn't trade the experience for anything, but it really does get to me. Glad to see this. I was coming out to say it, although I quit smoking cigarettes the day I started World of Warcraft, and I'm currently sitting on 15 years sober as of an 8 out of 8, so it wasn't a waste for me, really. And lots of my guildmates are on my Facebook, and I do have some great memories. Edit. Quit day and date I started WoW. 8808 is not a progression number. Story 16. I have a bachelor's degree in astronomy from one of the world's best universities. I now work as a software engineer. I have a master's in molecular biology and work as a pizza man. Got my bachelor's in molecular biology, saw the field, ended up getting a second bachelor's in mechanical engineering. Master's in archaeology checking in. Master's in art history. I figured I wasn't going to be able to retire anyway. I might as well spend my working life doing something that interests me. That plan has not turned out well. Story 17. I know all the tricks to make a website look as good in Internet Explorer 6 as in Chrome, Safari, or Opera. Oh, I feel your pain. I also know how to make emails look identical across a huge number of clients, which is actually more difficult, yet feels equally pointless. Hey now, before I actually learned the hellscape of Outlook compatibility, our app's emails in that client at best look like scams. At worst would delete important functionality, links, generated data, etc. So not pointless. That said, writing email compatibility makes me feel like a coding caveman. Story 18. I spent half my Army career in various schools learning to repair nuclear missiles. Now I'm doing desktop support and teaching the new guys how to install printers remotely. If one of the new guys gets ticked off at a printer and launches it across the room, you can teach them how to fix it. You may get charged with a horrific crime, and rather than face a trial and imprisonment, you flee to a third world country. That country's dictator may trade you protection from extradition in exchange to maintain their recently acquired black market nukes. Story 19. RuneScape. But it's been pointless since day one. My friend just 99'd every skill on Iron Man. Unbelievable waste of time. Unbelievable waste of time? You have no idea how amazing it feels. For at least 10 minutes. What do you mean, waste of time? Now he can play the game. Story 20. Reddit. My primary source of entertainment. To be honest, I stay completely away from the vile areas of Reddit and Quora, and Redditors have made me laugh harder than any joke, movie, or play I've ever seen. There are some brilliantly funny people that post here, and quick. Story 21. Minecraft. From 2011 to probably 2018, 2019, it was like my go-to depression game. When my depression got bad, some days I'd play for 12 hours. Built a whole huge city with districts, multiple tall buildings, rail system, a mob zoo, etc. I kind of miss it sometimes. It may be pointless, but if it gets you through the day, then I consider it useful to take care of yourself, even if it includes a couple hours of coping. Story 22. It took me 8 years to get my chemical engineering degree. I've never worked a single day as a chemical engineer. I'm a data analyst now. Reminds me of the guy that told me he had paid over $100,000 for an undergrad chemistry degree, and that the only thing he used it for was his pool. At least he can afford a pool. Story 23. My marriage. The leading cause of divorce is marriage. The statistics are staggering. A record 100% of divorces begin with marriage. Something to think about. Story 24. Sorting and organizing my MP3 collection. Hell, the pain is real. Had to make it easy to find in Winamp. It really whips the llama's posterior.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.
Story 1. So, a big one is don't take out your bad day on somebody who's just trying to make it better. A small story. So I hate my job, and it's hectic. Hours are long, and overtime is mandatory. This particular Sunday, I was alone and had to do all the work myself. As soon as I got home, my wife asked me if I could cook dinner because she was tired. Keep in mind, I came home to a spotless house and woke up that very morning at 4 a.m. just to bring me coffee. Inside, I was furious and anxiety-ridden. I wanted to be snappy and be babied, but I realized why I was feeling angry, and it had nothing to do with her. So I instead just spoke with her about my day. She let me vent. We went and did something fun together and ate out. Both our days were made better together. It's taboo to speak this, but oftentimes people want an easy target to take their anger out on. Somebody safe who will take it. This is an emotion that's important to realize, and once you see it, you must control it. The end result of treating your partner like a punching bag is losing that emotional support. Eventually, they will actively avoid you, so your day is now not only terrible, but now nobody will care. Everybody wants a queen until it's time to act like a king. Everybody wants a queen until it's time to act like a king? Didn't expect a philosophy lesson today. This needs to be stuck somewhere. I hope I can find a boyfriend who is able to have the kind of relationship with me that you have with your wife. Emotional intelligence, but also kindness and mutual respect. You've got something special there. I'm not perfect. I just learned from a previous marriage. I will admit I made a lot of mistakes. I said things that were reactionary and mean. I let instigations create retaliations. I married my daughter and just hoped it would work out. Nothing for the right reasons. Eventually, I learned that I would not be the best father I could be if I was miserable. We both agreed to get a mutual divorce and split custody. End of the day, in my opinion, any issues I had with her are in the past. That's still my daughter's mother, and she loves her. I took this time to sit and think. because I wanted my next marriage to be happy. This life is too short to be miserable. I will never be a millionaire, etc., but I do have the power to make my life a happy one. Before I moved on, I knew I needed to heal. So I took that time to heal, work out, reflect, spend time with my daughter, and it just happened so randomly. I met her when she was a nanny. Instant auras just clicked, and it felt incredible. This is going to sound crazy, but ever since the first date, she lived with me every single day. Drive 45 minutes every day to be with me, and wake up earlier to get to work. Our cultures are opposite. She's Colombian, and I'm Texan. So I just found her fascinating, and I was welcomed by her family and taught a whole new world. Every day was something new. She's always interesting, and I love to learn from her and each other. She taught herself English, grew up in the mountains, dirt floors and concrete furniture, still went to college all by herself. She's accomplished so much even before we met. We have a strong mutual respect and admiration. She's always been and always will be my greatest investment. Everything she touches becomes successful. I think it's crucial to be able to trust the mind of your partner. I know she's brilliant. If we do fail, we just try to learn from it. Sorry, I'm ranting, but yeah, I'm not perfect. I've just made a lot of mistakes. I really agree with the last part. You don't have to be perfect, just learn from the mistakes you've made. I kind of always said that myself. But there was one part there that was kind of weird. It sounded like he said he married his daughter or something like that. I don't think that's what they wanted to say. I think it was just a little glitch in how the text was translated. Moving on. Story 2. I'm sorry if I sound like I'm rambling on or if the reply is too long. There's a TLDR at the end. Sometimes the poor communication, the hurdles, and the marathon do end, and you'll be happy you didn't throw in the towel and move on. It takes strength, courage, and commitment sometimes to make a relationship work. The question has to be, is this person worth the effort? For you, it sounds like a resounding yes after each reply someone has left you. My wife and I had great communication when we were dating. Once we got married, it went downhill pretty fast. She just wouldn't talk about anything bothering her until it would explode into huge arguments. I'm sure I was part of the problem, maybe not presenting myself in a way that she felt secure enough to talk with me about problems or even happy things. She was also terrified I would abandon her, so it caused her to hold a lot of things back. Fear will do crazy things to people. Our marriage was really on the rocks and could have come to an end sooner than later. We both started to individually decide to see a psychiatrist and therapist. We thought of doing couples therapy. However, we wanted to work on ourselves first, because before we could heal our relationship, we needed to address our own issues and feelings. Rome wasn't built in a day, and a healthy relationship is the same. It takes time and commitment. Well, even though we both made amazing progress on ourselves over a pretty long period of time, we both figured something still needed to drastically change to stay together. We didn't want to reach that point where we gave up on our marriage because we truly do love one another deeply. I know what I'm about to write isn't something that everyone would jump at trying, and I'm not suggesting you try it even. I'm just writing about what helped me in my situation. That there is hope, and there are plenty of times things and people can and do change, and life becomes so much better. I never tried to change her. She never tried to change me. We each decided on our own that we needed to make changes to ourselves if we wanted things to work. You can't forcibly change someone, and I would never want to try and change someone I love. So finally, after my long-winded reply, now comes the metamorphosis of our relationship. One day, I came up with the idea that we could try some magic mushrooms together. I'm 40 now, but I tried them back when I was 18 or 19 once or twice. I knew someone to buy them from, and I know of the benefits to the human mind. She's never been into smoking weed even, but she figured she would give it a try. What do we have to lose at this point? Over 6 months, we took them 3 to 4 times. Immediately, the first night we tripped together, things started to get so much better. It's like we bonded in the intimate and spiritual matter. It was also the best spicy time either of us ever had in our lives. Somehow it brought us so much closer together, and our communication improved drastically. We talk about everything now, and neither of us is fearing the other's reaction to what we have to say, so we aren't holding things back. We have more love, respect, and a greater understanding of each other's needs now than we've ever had for anyone before this. Life just feels so good now. It's really an amazing difference from the last 5.5 years before this. Too long didn't read? Magic mushrooms probably saved our marriage. I'd love to try that with her sometime. My girlfriend, not your wife, obviously. I'm glad it went that way for you. That's a hell of a way to fix a marriage, but also seems like a pretty good one considering it helped both of you on a deeper level personally as well as together. Unfortunately, my girlfriend doesn't drink, smoke, or do any illicit substances of any kind, and no amount of convincing or reasoning will work, I'm sure. But I'll always remember this as the day I learned magic mushrooms can save marriages. To be honest, there was a lot of groundwork laid before the magic mushrooms entered the picture. They put a lot of work into themselves. And I don't know what led to the decision, but I don't think just taking some illicit substance or getting drunk would save a marriage, then you would not have a lot of the domestic violence calls you would see today. I think this is very much an outlier. Story 3. This. Absolutely this. Actually talking about what you and what she wants in communication, rather than mind games, manipulation, gaslighting, coercing, or using things as punishment. When she doesn't even listen to your reasons, or at least make an attempt to understand your side of anything, and instead she takes it personally, like you killed her cat or something, believing in her own opinions and feelings instead of at least trying to see both sides of the relationship. Also, when she doesn't let go of anything ever, if you get into an argument and all you're trying to do is just get her to at least understand your side of something, and she brings up past situations or has a predetermined view of the situation simply because it's you that she's talking to, holding a grudge for no reason. I get into arguments all the time with my girlfriend, and she constantly and conveniently ignores my points on things or how I feel about it, chalking it up to her wanting to win or making me lose. I always say it's not about winning or losing, or it's not about wrong or right, and she doesn't understand it. Sometimes we just want to be understood. When my goal is to simply get her to understand my side of things, while her parameters for winning an argument is to prove me wrong based on what she believes or thinks is right, then there's discourse. It's exhausting when the person you like or love doesn't at least make an effort to change or accept you and instead blames you, even if she doesn't outright say it. Is communication and acceptance so hard? Is it really that hard to just accept that people have different views instead of denying everything and deciding what's right and ignoring how the other person feels? I've dated girls like that. It's just going to get worse, man. I hope not. I've known her for over 13 years, and we've been dating for about 2 to 3, depending on how you look at it. I'm not saying I haven't made my own mistakes, been subjected to my own fallacies and ego and pride. It takes a long time to change the core of a person, so trying to get past my own issues is difficult enough. I often say to her, I feel like I'm in a running race, except every time I screw up, according to whatever she considers wrong, I start the race over and another hurdle is added to the track, with the finish line moving another 10 meters further away. Every hurdle hit just brings up the past or completely irrelevant issues that might be relevant to her, but I and my friends don't see how, and I have to do my best to get back to square one while remembering to avoid that new particular hurdle. Sorry, venting. My apologies. Think for a moment what it would probably be like if you were divorced from her and you were sharing custody of your kids. How cooperative do you think she would be? Dude, you're on the edge of a cliff about to go over the edge, and you're thinking, maybe I'll be the one that doesn't get unalived. I don't know. We were talking about green flags, and I'm really not seeing any in this situation. It just sounds like this person is venting about their relationship, and they need to. It's just in a pretty dire situation. I'm sorry they're going through that.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.